Martinez, and this is Manifest, and I want to give you a deck profile of my Doffy deck that I use to represent myself for the Treasure Cup over in Miami. Got top 16, went to day 2, did my round 1 opponent, who was one of my losses from the day before. It was a much closer game than my day 1, but I love how it represented me. I had a lot of questions of people asking me why I played certain cards and the ratios of my cards, so we're just going to go through that, and I'll try to answer all the questions that I can, and let's get into it. So first things first, it's Doffy, our boy. He is, I think, the second most combo heavy leader we have outside of Law. Obviously, combo Law. But his ability is literally, you give him 2 Dawn, on swing, pay 1, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a 7 Warlord character and it costs 4 or less, you can play it onto the field rested. That's kind of the engine of your value engine. It's, I'm not going to say the cornerstone of it, and I think that's where a lot of Doffy players kind of get confused on, where it's like, well, if I'm not doing a leader effect every turn, then am I playing the game right? Sometimes you just got a hard drop, but this is essentially you're saving a card from hand to play. So let's get into it. First things first, 3 Law. He's literally just a 1k blocker. And he sometimes you want to hold him in hand because you don't have anything else to do outside of Mihawk besides play this card. So sometimes you want to be like, drop Mihawk and then have something to play. So that's, for me, is where that comes in. Next card is for Perona. She is the most consistent part of this whole thing. She has so much utility, so much value. So the first thing is obviously turn 1, drop her, sort the top 5, and then that gets your Doflamingo plays going. So the things that people don't realize, and I'll get to it more when I get to Gecko Moria, is like you can loop this, and the same thing with Teach. But I'll get to those things when I get to those cards. But 1k counter. Source top 5. This is your consistent piece. The deck would almost be dead without it. Also, full art, stick to your hand. Alrighty. Now, the MVP of my topping is Alvida. Most people look at this card and they go, that's a 2k counter. Of course you play it. I go, this is my answer to green. This is my answer to red. This is a lot of answers to decks that people don't take advantage of when they play blue. Now, when you're going against your green-red matchups, more often than not, I started with this. The moment I saw their leader is like Luffy, Zoro, or Kid, this is what I went for. Because how it goes turn 1, play Alvida, and then from there, they almost don't know what to do. Because this 1, this deals with blockers, and 2, for reds, it deals with Robin, and then you always bounce it, because if that Robin can't pop, that's 3 Dawn that's never going to go towards anything. And then the green matchup, if it's like Okiku, any of the blockers, Killer Blocker, any of those cards are dealt with by this. And the whole point of green is that like they like to have these good on-tempo curve bodies, and then they build off their very well statted, well affected characters. But if you keep bouncing them in the hand, you're going to control the board. And then even if they swing into this now fulfilled its job as it wasted an attack. This stopped an attack that would have went to your life. This is, I think, an underrated first turn play, and then late game is a 2k counter. I love this card. MVP of the event for me. Now, for Baby Doffy. This man, outside of Alvida, this man did everything to make sure I didn't lose my games. I failed him on my day 2 match. But he, there was games I had no business winning. because I misstacked. But fortunately, because he is a blocker, he's a 3-cost blocker that stacks the top 5. Without him, on those 2 misplays, it was my round 2, my round 4 matchups, if I remember correctly. The fact that he was a blocker and then I misstepped what my opponent was going to do, and I misstacked. The fact that he was a blocker saved me, because if I would have done those same plays, like let's say I did it with Perona, and because she's not a blocker, I wouldn't have been able to stop those combo plays that they ended up doing to me. This lifesaver. Now, this next part, I gotta go through all the cards, and I gotta show all the cards, so that way it'll be a faster transition. So we're gonna go through it. So it's gonna be 3 of the Sentomaru, 4 Kuma, 3 Pacifista, and 2 of the Pacifista blocker. So, first of all, this is Sentomaru. The Sentomaru is my pick for a lot of reasons. A lot of people, especially at the event, they interviewed me about it. And I know a lot of people are wondering, why would you play this over, which you'll see later, like more of like Mihawks, Doflamingos, Virgos, Teaches. Like you'll see those ratios later, but they're like, why do you play this? And now you're gonna get your answers to the whole grand scheme of it all. This card, to some people, is a win more card, where it's like, I generate bodies here and I generate bodies here. But what's actually happening is that what this card is allowing me to do. So what Sentomaru allows me to do is check my deck, see what's in my deck, and then because I know this deck like the back of my hand, I know from the cards that are missing in the deck, I know what cards are in my life. And because of that, I can now gauge, do I want to take this life? Do I want to guard more because there's nothing in here I really need, and so on. And then because of that, it gives me the knowledge of, let's say hypothetically later, I need a Mihawk and I can't see it. It's more likely for me to get it in my life. I'll be more generous of my opponent taking my life, because the odds are in my head it's more likely I'll get the Mihawk here or the Doflamingo or whatever card I need from the life versus my deck. And then that's where this card really shines. Now, it's obviously a power card. It generates 6Ks for free, essentially, or these blockers. And the reasons why I choose these blockers is for 2 particular reasons. One is that the Kuma does it in a way where it's that when this is on board, most people assume, 1, I'm not even playing Pacifista, or 2, if I am, I'm only playing this one. So they will set up their plays to, all right, he has the blocker, and then after I get through the blocker, he's going to summon the vanilla, but I can still hit him. Now on KO, because he specials a Pacifista on KO, sometimes they don't see that you go block, this dies, bring out the blocker. And they're like, well, I wasn't planning on trying to go through 2 blockers. And they invested Dawn to make me use a blocker instead of just using my hand. And now they're kind of like playing with themselves at this point. The other thing is, sometimes when you're like, let's say you already have control of the board. You already have your Mihawks, your Doflamingos, your Virgo. And now it's no longer how do I kill my opponent versus my opponent has to try to kill me now, and then so that way this can now generate blockers for me without me having to invest more. Now that's this package, and I'll go into a little bit more detail with the Sentomaru when I get to the bigger guys. But that's the general premise. Is this allows me to look at my prizes, and it helps me in my green and purple matchups. Because another thing about Kuma, before we move on, is that with Kuma, your purple matchup is significantly easier. And that's why I play a bigger package, because I want this to go off. I believe it was my round 5 opponent. I was playing against Kaido. It was the only Kaido I played that day. And what happened was I had 2 Kumas on board. He tried to bait me into using my Kumas. But I read the read that he was trying to 10-drop me. And I just refused to let them go. My board was originally a Law, a Blocker Pacifista, 2 Kumas, and a Sentomaru originally. And he was baiting me on trying to block with the Kuma. So he's like, he had 2 kings, a queen, and then leader. He's like swing with leader. That was the big tail sign. He should have swung with the kings first, but that's neither here or there. But he's like Kaido, king, and then I blocked the Kaido one. I blocked with the I blocked with the Kaido. I blocked with the Law. He goes queen. I blocked with this. He goes king, and then I easily could have blocked him, but because I read that, I took the 2, went to 1, but I had game on board at that point because I was just gonna swing with everything. He blows up the board, and then because I had the 2 Kumas, I brought out in my hand at the time I had a block Pacifista and a normal Pacifista. And then what happens is the board state equalizes. But now, well, that's how the Kaido player plays it, so that way he doesn't just lose on crackback. But because I summoned bodies on his turn, and I still had bodies, and he had nothing else to do, I just gamed him I gamed him not the turn after, because he had a bunch of guard, but I got him the turn after that. And it was because he just couldn't handle that. He blew up my board, and I still had bodies. So that's why I like this engine. I love it. I don't know if it's going to stick once we get to set 2. But the only way to know is when we get there. So that's the reason for all of that. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes of what everyone usually plays. First of all, the best card in the deck. This man has gotten me everything I needed. He's the most generous man. This man might as well be called Santa Claus because he just gives it to you. Like the moment you see him, you always want to put him right on top and let him reveal. For those who don't know, on play, you add a 7 Warlord or a Thriller Bark Pirate from your grave that costs 4 or less to your hand. Now, what a lot of players don't know sometimes is that you can grab her. You can grab Perona with this. And sometimes they just refuse to do so. I like to, for the fact that sometimes you just need a combo. Sometimes, like, let's say, hypothetically, you go, like, this is in your hand. And you're like, well, I want to combo off. I want to do big swings and play more cards from my hand. So you go here. Instead of grabbing the Doffy, you grab this. So you only paid 5. 2 bodies. Stack your Doflamingo. Do Doffy. Give the 2. Tap the 1. Special whatever you stack. You still have 2 Dawn left over to Love Beam, or if you want to drop some Laws. Now, granted, which we'll get to, you'll see later, I don't play all the events in the world, but my opponent doesn't know that. Well, until now, I guess. We'll talk about it. The next part is for Draco Mihawk. This man did nothing besides be a 2K counter. Yeah, but it's fine. It's fine. Because I can get him with Gecko Moria. Why I kind of like the deck is that some decks play like 3 sets of 2K counters. I only have to play 2 sets of 2K counters because I have a Gecko Moria that gets me more 2K counters. So I don't have to waste deck slot for more 2K counters. His effect is give him 1, he swings, draw 2, discard 2. It's a pretty good effect. It's alright. It's gonna be really good when Nami comes out in set 3. But I never used it all day during the first day of Treasure Cup, neither the second day of Treasure Cup. Never used the effect. It was only a 2K counter. It comes up every now and then, but it's mostly a 2K counter that you could grab with Gecko Moria. Now, our boy Teach, our boy Blackbeard, this man, he, if I could play 4 of him, I could. My deck space is too tight to accommodate for 4. It was something I had to come to grips with. But nothing is more satisfying than Doflamingoing into a teach, bouncing the blocker, getting them, going right for the face. And the thing is that when you play Doffy, your opponent should always accommodate for teach when they set up their board. Where it's like, this, I need to accommodate for teach. Because you'll be surprised how many games I go, they put up one blocker, and I already stacked it with Perona Doflamingo. Teach, bounce a blocker, and I just go in for all the damage in the world. And the fact that Gecko Moria can get this man, and I ascent, like, that's what gave me the confidence to cut this down, is that this man gets this man. Like, in theory, if I wanted to, I have 7 copies of this man. So that's what gave me the confidence to cut it to 3. And there was a time where I was playing 4 this and 3 of the next card, which we'll get into right now. Which is 4 Boa. Now, this card, out of 9 rounds, day 1, and then my day 2, round 1. The amount of times this card did 1 damage out of 11 games and only blocked 2 attacks. Now, does this mean that this card's bad? No. This card did everything it needed to do because there's a third effect of this card that reads, this card will get jet pistoled. And because of that, my other card is going to get jet pistoled. What I usually did, and for the people that don't know, it's a blocker. It's a strong card. Blocker, give it a Dawn, on attack or on block. If you have 5 or less cards, draw a card. And this card, I would say, is Blue's biggest powerhouse. Because if you let this run, it runs to the races. You win. If this can go off once from an attack, and you still don't kill it, then you're going off to the races. You're winning that game. There's no reason for you to actually have plessed off this card and then lose. But usually because of red, they jet pistol this thing. So because of that third hidden effect, what I like to do is on plays where either I summon it off the Doflamingo, right? Or I hard drop it. I also do it while I have a Sentomaru on board, or I play it off Doffy and summon the Sentomaru. Because what happens there is that now my opponent is in a dilemma. Either one, they have to deal with the Boa, or they have to deal with the Sentomaru. Because both these cards demand respect. Both these cards could run off to the races. And there was literally a game of mine. It may have been my game 2, round 1 on day 2, where my opponent double jet pistoled. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. He double jet pistoled. But that's 8 Dawn gone with 2 left. There's not much play being pushed outside of that. And that's 2 jet pistols I don't need to worry about. But that's how you kind of want to play these cards. It's that, like, I'm going to put them both on the field, and you have to pick one or the other. I love this card. I will do anything I can to always play it. And that's why I end up wanting to do 4 of this versus 4 of this, 3 of this. Because even though odds are I don't get to play this card as much because of the jet pistols and everyone else, it's still too strong because sometimes you just hard drop it and then your opponent just loses their mind. So that's where the Boa comes into play. Now, for the big boys. And this is where we're going to get into the Sentomaru stuff and talk about it a little bit more. So, 2 Virgo. Just 5 drop, 7k, 1 counter vanilla. He's alright. We got a better one next set. Which is great. 2 Doffy. I used to hate this card. I used to think this was the worst card in blue. And it stuck that way until the week before the event. And then I was like, you know what? I need more Mihawks, but I don't want more 9 cost. I don't want to play more than 9 cost. So I was like, let me try the Doffy. The Doffy started performing, and I was like, all right. And it was very mixed reviewed until Treasure Cup. This man deserves his spot at 2. I wouldn't play more than 2. And he deserves his spot for the sole fact, and it's pretty easy where you go, Doffy affected this Doffy. Or the fact that you could like still have the 3 Dawn to be like, Doffy, do this Doffy, or Doffy, play this Doffy, or Doffy, play these, play whatever. Like, it's very, the freedom of having that extra 2 Dawn versus a Mihawk sometimes it's game changing, because you could just lose the game because you're just like, well, I have the Mihawk, but I don't have a 1-drop law to support it, and then my opponent will just go crazy about it, which ironically is a lesson that I learned in my day 2 game 2 matchup, where I admit I threw. I kind of cracked under the pressure. I saw the line, and then after it was all said and done. But I'll cover all of that in my tournament recap, in my tournament report. We'll talk all about that. But 2 Doffy, love the guy, did everything he needed. Then 2 Mihawk. See this boy? See those shoes? Man, this man's on drip on drip on drip. This man, I saw every single game. I saw him at least once, or I saw both my copies. And then you're going to be thinking, well, why do we play only 2 if I love this man so much? So the logic behind this is the logic behind this. So because how we talked about earlier, this card allows me to essentially map out my prizes, because I look at my deck, see what's missing, and now I know what's in my prize. So this is where it comes into play that I go through my deck, and let's say there's a Mihawk in prize, and I need the Mihawk. Usually I try to find it in my starting hand. I find one of these in my starting hand. If I can have one of these, it's perfect. But sometimes you don't. And sometimes you can't find them. And then you would say, well, why don't you just play more copies? Well, I don't want the consistency of my deck to be affected by me playing so many big ups. Like so many of the big guys. Because, yeah, they're big guys. And I want to see them. But if I see too many of them, the deck kind of cripples. As much as Doffy could just combo and make boards very fast out of nowhere, it cripples to its own hand. So I never want my hand to feel that I have to wait. I wanted that my hand couldn't keep up with my plays sometimes. But I can't, in the format that we're in, we can't let these things happen. But that's why I do what I do. So when you map it out and you ask yourself, is it more likely for me to get my big guys from here? And that's what it is. Is because odds are one of these are in here. That's just how the math works. They're either in here or they ended up in my hand. So that's kind of where it is at that point. Then, last 2 cards, 2 Love Me. There was a world where I was playing this deck and I played 9 events and I didn't play the Croc. Love Mellow is good. The Desert Spada is good, and there was a point where I had a huge fetish with Overheat. I thought that card was bonkers. But I slowly come to realize that because green became more prominent and red was slowing down to deal with green, I had to let my deck speed up. And in doing so, I don't have the luxury to play more events. I need to hit the ground running as fast as I can, because obviously we don't have any rush. So I need to be able to drop bodies efficiently without having to worry about Dawn all the time, to play my events. And the reason I choose Doflamingo versus the other ones, it's literally drawing the card. That was the deciding factor. I had a friend of mine try to tell me that Desert Spada may be the right way to go. The only issue I have with Desert Spada is that that card doesn't do anything that my deck doesn't already do. I already have a card that stacks. I already have a card that gives me 2k counter. You know, this card gives me like I already play enough cards that do what Desert Spada does. I needed a card that does something that my deck can't do, and that is draw a card for free. That it actually, well, obviously this nets an advantage in card economy, but at least it's not like Mihawk where it's like I'm drawing 2, discarding 2, and that's what it is. At least I get my 4k, and then this could become a 5k counter or a 6k counter depending what I draw. And then obviously I could stack it with whatever. So this is in theory a 6k counter versus a Desert Spada, which okay I stacked, but if I'm doing everything right, I'm stacking anyways. With that said, I just have a few little things to mention. When you guys play and you guys are thinking of your plays, there's nothing wrong with doing stuff like this. I just want to do a quick little tidbit real fast. So, when you combo with Teach, sometimes how you want to combo, and this is where I feel a lot of Doffy players don't do, and then because they're scared that they don't want to waste a Teach, that they don't stack properly. Because sometimes your opponent has an empty board, and then you play Perona, and then you're like, well, I have a Teach, but if I stack him, and then swing, I'm not gonna, on the next turn, I don't have anything to hit because my opponent's board is empty, and I'm banking on that they summon a 3 or less. So I choose not to stack them, you know, the second from the top, because obviously you're gonna draw for Doffy. But for the case of this example, you know, like for Doffy here, and your opponent has nothing, because sometimes your opponent just goes, well, I don't want to have you do anything. So either they'll play like a big guy, or they'll be aggressive and be like don, and they don't play anything. Don't forget that you could Doffy. I mean, you could Teach, Doffy for Teach, and then Teach, bounce any of these back to your hand. And like, I feel like players, either they know it and they don't do it, or they just don't realize that you could bounce your own cards. This is what got me through a lot of my rounds, where it's like I go Teach, bounce Perona so I could restack, and this is a play that helps you adapt your stack to your match. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the deck profile. I'm more than happy to answer any questions to the list or anything as of that. I'm super excited for this game. I'm super excited to start this YouTube channel. I told myself that if I topped, I would start, and we only have a long way to go. And from here to there, I just want to say have a great day, and we'll see you next time.